Volunteering. It's supposed to be one of the most fulfilling things we can do, right? So why does it so often lead to total burnout and, honestly, disillusionment? Well, today, we're going to unravel what's called the volunteer's paradox. We're going to figure out why some of the most rewarding work can end up feeling so thankless.
I mean, we've all heard that phrase, right? Maybe you've even felt it yourself. That feeling that you're just giving and giving and giving for a thank you that might never actually show up. And look, that feeling, it's totally real. But it turns out that calling it a thankless job isn't just wrong. It points us in completely the wrong direction.
In fact, the science tells us the exact opposite is true. The act of giving is, get this, biologically hardwired to be rewarding for us. So that thankless feeling, it's not really about a lack of gratitude. It's actually a symptom of something much deeper, systemic failures that are actively sabotaging the very real, very powerful benefits of altruism.
Okay, so to figure out where things go wrong, we've got to start with why volunteering is designed to feel so right in the first place. And the answer, well, it's literally hardwired into our own brains. It's this amazing thing called the helper's high. And no, this isn't just some feel-good, fluffy idea. It's a real, documented neurochemical event. When you help someone, your brain's pleasure centers literally light up and release endorphins. Just like a runner's high. It's basically our biology's built-in reward system for doing good.
And that immediate high, it actually builds into some incredible long-term benefits. We're talking across the board, mental, physical, and social health. The data is super clear on this. Volunteering is linked to everything from lower rates of depression all the way to a longer life. Seriously. Researchers even call it a purpose buffer, which basically acts like a shield against stress and anxiety.
Which, brings us right back to that big paradox. If volunteering is this powerful, this good for us, then why on earth are we even talking about burnout? Why does something so beneficial so often feel completely and utterly draining?
Well, the answer is probably not what you think. It's not what most people or even most volunteer managers would ever expect. The research on what actually predicts burnout reveals something, well, it's completely counterintuitive. Okay, this is where everything we think we know gets flipped on its head. The stuff you'd assume would help, like, say, dedicating more and more time, that actually increases the risk of burnout. But what decreases it? Being motivated by your own personal values, feeling like you're really part of the team. And this leads to a really crucial and, honestly, kind of dangerous conclusion. Your most dedicated people, the ones who seem like they're all in, they're often the most vulnerable to burning out.
So, okay, burnout is the psychological state, it's the what, but it's almost always caused by specific failures within the organization. That's the why. So let's break down the anatomy of why people actually decide to leave.
How about this for a number? A staggering 75%. 3/4 of volunteers walk away from an organization simply because they don't feel appreciated. But what does unappreciated even mean? It's a pretty vague term, right? What does it actually look like in the real world?
Well, it usually breaks down into 4 really specific frustrations. These are the things that are hiding behind that unappreciated label. First, there's low participation efficacy. That's the feeling that your time is being wasted or your skills are totally underused. Then there's lack of perceived voice, feeling like nobody in leadership is listening to you. Third is poor group integration, basically feeling like an outsider, socially isolated. And finally, inadequate support, being thrown into the deep end without the right training or tools. This is what thankless actually feels like. And this quote, wow, it just captures the end result of all that perfectly. This comes from the founder of an arts guild, someone highly skilled who was giving 50 to 60 hours a week. She said, "I realized my 4 years of giving were all in vain." Think about that. She didn't just burn out, she felt betrayed. It wasn't just thankless anymore. It was this devastating realization that all her effort, all her passion, was basically made irrelevant by the very organization she was trying to build.
So how do we fix this? It's a huge problem. Well, the solution requires a pretty radical shift in thinking for both volunteers and the organizations they work with. It's all about moving from just being a task doer to becoming a system changer. And the #1 tool for making that shift, it's something called systems thinking. Instead of just playing whack-a-mole with individual problems as they pop up, it's about stepping back and seeing the whole interconnected system. For a volunteer, this is the key. It's how you find the leverage points where you can make a truly meaningful and lasting impact.
A really great way to put this into practice is with something called the iceberg model. So imagine an iceberg. At the very tip, the part you can see, that's the event, the immediate thing, right? A family needs a meal. But to really understand what's going on, you have to look below the surface. You ask, okay, what are the patterns here? Are there trends over time? Maybe you notice most families are from just 2 neighborhoods. Then you go deeper. What structures are causing that pattern? It could be a factory closure or no public transit. And finally, you get to the very bottom, the foundation. What mental models, what core beliefs are holding those structures in place? Maybe it's the belief that food insecurity is a personal failing. See how that works?
Now, this is so powerful because it directly attacks the 2 main drivers of burnout we talked about, feeling ineffective and feeling like you have no voice. When you start thinking like this, you're not just handing out meals anymore and hoping it makes a difference. No, you become a strategic partner. You're gathering the crucial intel that can help solve the problem at its actual root.
Okay, this brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, how to actually build a better system for recognition. Because if that thankless feeling is really a symptom of a broken system, then we need to design what you might call an architecture of thankfulness, one that's based on what people actually want. And what their research shows here is just a massive disconnect. It's wild. 80% of organizations say their #1 barrier to recognizing volunteers is, you guessed it, lack of budget. But what do 80% of volunteers say they want the most? To simply hear how their work made a real difference. And 70%? They just want a simple in-person thank you.
I mean, let that sink in for a second. The 2 most desired forms of recognition are 100% free. This isn't about money at all. It's about management's time and where they place their priorities. The biggest barrier isn't a lack of cash, it's a failure of leadership to just be present, to track the impact, and to communicate it back to the team.
So this is basically the playbook for how to do it right. Instead of calculating dollars saved, which honestly just turns altruism into a transaction, share specific stories about the impact they're having. That connects their effort directly to the mission. And instead of some small, generic gift, give them a real voice. Actually listen to and act on their feedback. That is the ultimate sign of respect. It's all about shifting from these low-effort gestures to making a true investment in your people.
So when you boil it all down, the entire relationship just has to be reframed. It can't be a transaction of, I give you my free labor, you give me thanks. That whole framework is the root of the problem. It just leads to organizations feeling obligated and volunteers feeling, well, used. The real solution? It's to stop treating volunteers like free labor and start treating them like what they are: strategic partners, co-investors in the mission. And the return on that investment isn't some gift basket or a cheap plaque. It's seeing the tangible impact of their work and really knowing, that they're a respected, essential part of the team.
So I'll leave you with this final thought. What if we all just stopped focusing on the rewards we think we need to buy and started providing the one thing that costs absolutely nothing but means absolutely everything? What if the greatest thank you an organization can possibly give isn't a gift, but a voice,